Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. Yes, I am actually doing a second question the narrative video this week because I keep thinking about how I was talking about the fact that his story, I'm not even going to say history, but his story repeats itself a lot. The controllers who wrote the narrative, they tend to use the same excuses or the same events over and over and over again, except they put them at different locations and sometimes at different times. And crystal palaces are a great example for me to show you of how that actually happens. Now, I have to point out that when I started this Question the Narrative series, I was mainly a homeschooling channel. But I started the Question the Narrative series because I wanted to introduce a group of people who may not have ever heard of a lot of the topics that I discuss here. And that is why I bring up some of the topics that I do, like crystal palaces, because I've had people say to me that, well, you're way behind. We've known about this for a long time. And that's the thing. I originally, when I started this series, it was to my homeschooling audience who may not have, again, have ever heard of this stuff. But anyway, and I'm thankful because it has really branched out and I have a really great new community now. And that's what we really need to do. We need to inform others about what's going on. And just because we don't have the exact answers, it doesn't mean that we can't ask the questions. But anyway, let's get into the Crystal Palace. So this is the Crystal Palace. It's a rendering, obviously, at Hyde Park in London. It was the building, the main building for the World's Fair there. And I'm not going to get too much into the architecture of the Crystal Palaces today. If you want to really get into the architecture of the Crystal Palaces, there are some great channels who talk about that. Autodidactic has talked about it. John Levi, I mention his channel all the time. Conspiracies Are Us. Wooden Nickels. I'm like saying all these from the top of my head. But also I've got to say Howdy McCoskey. And I'm going to be mentioning him in a lot of these videos because he wrote a great book called Exposing the Expositions, Ancient Roman America. And it is chock full of information about this stuff. So if you really are interested in this sort of topic, crystal palaces and world's fairs, you will want to get that book and I will link it in the description box. But anyway, I am going to go over some of the architecture just so that you can get an idea of what these crystal palaces are. So the first one that I showed you was the one that was at Hyde Park. Here's another rendering of it. And there are actually some really puzzling stories just about the crystal palaces. For example, this palace was built in 1851 and it had 900,000 square feet of sheet glass. And it's something to think about when you wonder how that was possibly accomplished. So they tell us that it was a cast iron and plate glass structure originally built in Hyde Park, London, to house the Great Exhibition of 1851. It was actually designed by a gardener. They tell us it was a gardener named Joseph Paxton, and it says he was an English gardener, architect, engineer, and member of Parliament, best known for designing the Crystal Palace and for cultivating the Cavendish banana, the most consumed banana in the Western world. There's a great documentary out there right now that so many people have recommended to me. It's 5 hours long, but it again has so much information. You can watch it in little pieces. It's called, I think, History of the Flat Earth. I'm not sure, but it's not really about the flat earth. It talks a lot about the historical concepts like this, but he gets more into Joseph Paxton. So I will leave links for all of the channels that I mentioned and for that video. But it tells us that the sheet glass method they used Chance Brothers, okay? And Chance Brothers, oops, let me go back on there, was a glassworks originally based in Spawn Lane, Smethwick, West Midlands in England. It was a leading glass manufacturer and a pioneer of British glassmaking technology. So that's where they say that they got the 900,000 square feet. of glass that was used for this building here. This was actually when it was moved. They originally did move it from Hyde Park, and this was its second location. So I want you to look at that. And another interesting thing is that they claim that this was built in 9 months. 9 months, 900,000 square feet of sheet glass. And there were also fountains everywhere as well. So I want you to keep in mind, though, the year 1851 and the sheer size or the sheer amount of glass that was used. But that's not even the point of this video. I will get to that right now, though, because what I want you to see is what happened to the Crystal Palace. Oh, it's like you can see the floor plan of it. The Crystal Palace was destroyed by fire. On the evening of the 30th of November of 1936, Buckland, I'm not sure who that was, I don't know if it matters, was walking his dog near the palace with his daughter Crystal, named after the palace, when they noticed a red glow within. Inside, he found 2 of his employees fighting a small office fire that had started after an explosion in the women's cloakroom. Realizing that it was a serious fire, they called the Penge Fire Brigade. Even though 89 fire engines and over 400 firemen arrived, they were unable to extinguish it. So the beautiful Crystal Palace was destroyed by fire. Just seeing if there's any other really interesting pictures of this. Oh, and there's another building. Again, this was at a World's Fair. This is the Festival of Empire. 1911, with the Canadian building in the foreground. Another absolutely beautiful building. Okay, but let's move on to our next Crystal Palace, because the one in London was not the only one. Next, we'll talk about the New York Crystal Palace. And actually, I do want to say that I find it very interesting that I think that they moved the London Crystal Palace about 2 years from its original place at Hyde Park, yet we only have renderings at Hyde Park, and we actually get photographs. Let me see where that is. Yeah, and we have an actual photo, 1854, so 3 years. So actual photo when it is here in Sydenham or Sydenham, I'm not sure how to say that, but just 3 years earlier, all we got was renderings. So anyway, now here we have the New York Crystal Palace. This one was in 1853, and it was said to have been modeled after the London Crystal Palace. So as you can see, another beautiful piece of art with, of course, the panes of glass everywhere. We have the beautiful dome. Got the American flag up there. Down here in this rendering, they even have the Native Americans in their traditional attire. And really, like, you could get so deeply into the history of the Crystal Palaces, the construction, everything. But here's what I want to show you now. Oh, you know what? Before I even get to that, I'm always like bouncing all over the place. So we see the sheets of glass here. We heard that the London one had 900,000 square feet of sheet glass. So I looked it up. I looked up the process of glass manufacturing. Now, this was in America. I'm not sure how different it would have been in London. But I wanted to see what exactly it would take to make that much glass in such a short period of time. And I just want you to keep in mind the year that this was said to be built, 1853. And let's see what it says about how this was done. Crown window glass was made in Massachusetts from 1792 to 1826. A bulb was blown, opened, flared out into a disc, cut into half circles, and then into panes. The cylinder process for making window glass was introduced from Europe after 1830. The cylinders, blown on a blowpipe, were cracked into lengths, split lengthwise, and flattened. The great development in window glass manufacture dates from about 1880, when natural gas began to be largely used. At a window glass factory, which he erected at Jeannette, Pennsylvania, James Chalmers began in 1889 to use the first continuous tank in this country. So 1889 was when they really came up with a system that would make glass more quickly. The first successful machine for making window glass, constructed under the Lubbers patents, was installed by the American Window Glass Company at Alexandria, Indiana in 1903. So that's the first successful machine for making window glass. So we have all of these panes of glass to be made for these crystal palaces, and yet they didn't even have a process that would have been very fast, let alone transporting it. Now, I think that it would have been easier to transport to the London Crystal Palace because there was a railroad built right there. I'm not sure if they had anything like that in New York, but let's read again how they would have had to make this. So, the cylinder process for making window glass was introduced from Europe after 1830. The cylinders blown on a blowpipe were cracked into lengths, split lengthwise, and flattened. That's how they had to make all of these panes of glass. And now that I think about it, they mentioned the cylinder method for the London Crystal Palace as well. So it would have been the same thing. So I don't know. I just have questions about that, how that could possibly be done in a pretty short period of time, especially like I said in London, that was said to have been built in 9 months. And I want you to notice something. The New York Crystal Palace was destroyed on the 5th of October, 1858, so only 5 years after it was constructed. Well, let's take a look. Well, there you have it. The New York Crystal Palace was destroyed by fire on October 5th, 1858, during the American Institute Fair held there. The fire began in a lumber room on the side adjacent to 42nd Street. Within 15 minutes, its dome fell, and in 25 minutes, the entire structure had burned to the ground. And here's a rendering of what that looked like. I have the hose there. So within 15 minutes, that dome was just gone. And yeah, New York Crystal Palace, poof, gone in a fire. Let's move on to the Munich Crystal Palace. It's called Glaspalast. I don't know if I said that right, but that's how I said it. So the Glaspalast was a glass and iron exhibition building located in the old Botanical Garden, Munich, modeled after the Crystal Palace in London. So this was also modeled after the Crystal Palace in London, and it was opened on July 15th, 1854. So here's what that looked like. Again, obviously, if you're going to call it a Crystal Palace, you have to assume that there's going to be a lot of glass there that is being used. And these are all, as you can see, in the same year that they were built. This is 1854. And let's see. So construction started on the 31st of December, 1853, and was completed the 7th of June, 1854. So this structure here only took 6 months to finish. And that includes the manufacturing of all of the glass that would have had to go in there. I don't know if you noticed, but it also tells you that it was destroyed on the 6th of June, 1931. Well, let's go see how this was destroyed, shall we? Fire. The building was destroyed in a fire on June 6, 1931, a fate shared with the other Crystal Palaces. The cause of the fire was later determined to be arson. So this one was arson. The fire in the Glaspalast irretrievably destroyed more than 3,000 artworks, including more than 110 paintings from the early 19th century. Lots lost in here, 6 months to build, and all of it gone, poof, in 1931 with yet another fire. Let's move on to the Montreal Crystal Palace. So the Crystal Palace was an exhibition hall built for the Montreal Industrial Exhibition of 1860. So again, we're still in the same time period. Originally located at the foot of Victoria Street, between St. Catherine and Cathcart Streets, then relocated to Fletcher's Field. So this is another one that was relocated. So here it says side view in 1866 at original location. So this was before it was moved. There we go. See a lot of the same features, but again, they say that they were all modeled after the Hyde Palace one. Does that look like some, what do they call that? Cymatic windows? I don't know. And the point is, someone actually asked me in the comments one time, so what are you saying, that these buildings were never built? And obviously these buildings were built. They're there. We have photos of them. Now for the renderings, we might say, okay, we don't really have actual evidence, but when you have photos, okay, it's there. But what I am questioning is, how did they build them? If they have the technology that we are told that they had during the time, how did they build these things? Did they have more advanced technology than what we were told? Or did someone else do it? Another civilization who had been here prior to those who did not have the technology. Obviously, someone had to build these things. But I don't believe that we have been told the truth on how they happened and possibly who did it. But anyway, so let's move on. Relocation and fire. Yes, that's right, my friends. This one was also destroyed by fire. In 1878, it was dismantled and moved to Fletcher's Field, part of which is now known as Jean Mance Park. In July 1896, the Crystal Palace was destroyed by fire, as London's original Crystal Palace would be, and Munich's and New York's. So, the site of the Crystal Palace between Montreal Avenue and St. Joseph Boulevard was developed for housing a few years after the fire. So here we have, yet again, a beautiful Crystal Palace. I wish that they would have more photos of this one, maybe from the front. Let me see if I can find some of those. Sadly, no, I went onto Wikipedia Commons and wasn't able to find a front picture of this Crystal Palace. They did have this one there. They also have it on the Wikipedia page. This is just supposed to be the interior, but I wanted more to see the front of what this one looked like. But anyway, so now we have the Crystal Palace in London, the Crystal Palace in New York, the Crystal Palace in Munich, and the Crystal Palace in Montreal, all destroyed by fire. But we're not finished yet, because next, and this one I actually was not able to find on Wikipedia, this was now the 1870s though, and we have another Crystal Palace. So the 13th Provincial Agricultural Exhibition of Upper Canada was held in Toronto in September 1858. Okay, so the photo was taken in the 1870s, but this was actually built in 1858. So again, we've got the same timeline going, all around the same time period. All this glass, you still have to wonder, how were they making all this glass for all these structures using the cylinder method that seemed like it would have taken a pretty large amount of time, not to mention transporting all of this heavy glass to the building sites. So anyway, so for this exhibition, an imposing permanent building was erected on the Toronto Fairgrounds, located south of what is now the Mental Health Center on Queen Street. The new building was called the Crystal Palace, and it was similar to the larger Crystal Palace built by Joseph Paxton. Remember, that's the gardener who built it. And I have to say that they said that he won a contest to design the Crystal Palace in London, just like they said that someone won a contest to design the new building on Ellis Island. And I think, and to me that seemed juvenile, but when I actually reading about it, I think that what they were calling contests was more like nowadays when people bid on contracts. It seems more like that to me and not like an actual contest, which I was thinking of, it'd be something with kids. But anyway, that's what I'm thinking of, something more along the lines of contracts, bidding on contracts. Anyway, I always go like off on a tangent. So it was similar to that one. Now, Toronto's Crystal Palace was designed by Sir Collingwood Schreiber and Sir Sandford Fleming. The palace was principally constructed of iron, glass, and wood and was erected in 90 working days. When complete, its one full story and upper gallery enclosed 47,000 square feet of space. All right, well, let's see. Is this one still standing? Well, let's find out. On Thanksgiving Day of 1906, the palace burned to the ground. A year later, the horticultural building was erected on the same site. So do you see what I'm referring to when I talk about how they take the same methods or the same events and just put them at different times and in different places? You will see a lot of this because I guess you can only fabricate so much, right? You just start running out of ideas. Anyway, so before I go, I thought that we would just take a quick look at Kansas City, Missouri, because I always have so many people sending me in the comments or maybe emailing me just ideas on things to look at, just tips on places that have really great buildings or really great histories. And I feel like I never get to address them as much as I want to. So I want to start just towards the end of all my videos, just going over some of the things that people have sent me. So today we're going to look at some buildings in Kansas City, Missouri. And I just typed it in to the images. This is beautiful. I don't know if this is the one that is a museum. Let me see. Okay, I believe that this one might actually be Union Station because I went over here to Wikipedia and it looks like these are both the same building. And so that would be, it says Union Station lit blue for the World Series. So I'm assuming that this one here is Union Station, but very pretty. And yeah, you see a lot of the same old world architecture on so many of these buildings. Let's just take a look through, see what else we can find here. Because I was scrolling through here earlier and there's a lot of really, I wish, this is Starlight Theater. I wish that they would have not had like a fisheye lens on this so we could have gotten a better look. But Starlight Theater. I've never been to Kansas City, Missouri. I've been to St. Louis. I've been to Fort Leonard Wood, but I've never been to Kansas City. So this is the New York Life Building. And again, we see a lot of that old world architecture. We have, I'm assuming that's going to be an eagle. We have arches. I don't know. Those look like they could possibly be windows down there. A lot of them have these roofs that have these fancy ornamentations on them. We even have them in our own little main street here. Very nice. Let's see. I'm pretty sure that this is, I think it's at a World War I museum. I could be wrong. So if you live in Kansas City and I'm wrong, tell me. But that looks like some sort of monument. This is really pretty. I was looking at this earlier. I would love to see what that is up there. There's like no way that I would be able to zoom in enough, I think. It's probably Columbia, the model for the Statue of Liberty, and the one that was really showcased at the Columbian exhibition in the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. But again, just look at this beautiful architecture, ornamentation. This looks like a beautiful downtown area. Some of these buildings remind me of things that I see around where I live also. Then again, you see this stuff everywhere, so it shouldn't surprise me. Look at that, an abandoned mansion. And that's what we really all need to do. We need to start looking around our own towns and realizing that, you know, this stuff can be found everywhere. Now, I have to admit that it is harder to find this. If you live out in the country, it might be a little bit harder for you to find some of this old world architecture, but it is in the, even in small towns. So this is the Mormon temple in Kansas City. So many photos of this. It's like, this is like the favorite of the photographers who take pictures here. That's all you see is that Union Station. And it is a very pretty building, but you know, it's just, there are so many other nice buildings there as well. Take a look at the inside of Union Station here too. Absolutely gorgeous. Like, look at the flooring. Here we're back again to just the extremely high ceilings, and just look at the detail up here. They just, it's true, they just don't build things like they used to. Because what we make nowadays is nothing compared to this stuff. It's sad. I think that to me, I always say that it's evidence of entropy, because we don't build anything even close to stuff like this anymore. So here we have the Central Library. Got the columns there. I think it actually says First National Bank. So I'm wondering if maybe they made it into a library. I'm not sure. It said First Central Library on the caption though. So, but still, no matter what it is, it's a beautiful building. But anyway, take a look around at your town and see what you find there. But that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one either here or over on Instagram. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.